North Korea is the most closed country in the world, and this Asian country is always the focus of great interest because of its crazy military parades and its nuclear program, which is of course condemned internationally, and also the dictatorial regime that it follows. A United Nations report in 2014 concluded that the size and nature of the human rights violations in North Korea are unprecedented in the contemporary world. All of this, of course, condemns them greatly, but with the exception of human rights, all of this hostile and aggressive behavior is not something the North Korean government should be ashamed of. But the thing they are really embarrassed about, and they try in all their media to cover it up, is their very poor economic situation, an incredibly miserable economy. And this is what we will talk about today in the video in detail. But before I start, the channel specializes in economics and trade through the internet. Don't forget to support us, subscribe to the channel, and like the video. Let's start from the beginning. The North Korean economy has a nominal GDP of approximately 25 billion US dollars. This number is really very difficult to calculate accurately because the economic data coming from North Korea is very little. It is also necessary to calculate the exact value of the North Korean currency is the North Korean yuan, and this currency has almost no international value, meaning that there is no exchange market for it at the international level. This explains the general trend of this country, far from the threats that they always issue to the people, that they are threatened by everyone around them, and despite all the opportunities that this country has received, the state of North Korea. However, all these opportunities ended in failure, and North Korea has become forgotten on the global economic stage. To understand this problem specifically, we need to go back to after the Korean War ended in 1953, following a significant conflict within Korea that ultimately led to its division into North Korea and South Korea. Capitalist South Korea and Communist North Korea, which belongs to the Soviet Union and China. North Korea was able to start off strong after it started building itself up strongly after this war. The North Korean government has always followed the approach of a planned and directed economy, meaning production, investment, and allocation of capital goods. Everything is managed centrally by the state. This economic planning always included a series of 5-year plans that were implemented over 5 years, or sometimes even 7 or 3 years. These plans were approved by the Supreme People's Assembly of Korea at that time, and then they would turn into a legally binding final plan. Initially, these plans included matters like, over time, the problem of stagnation and growth in North Korea increased. Although North Korea was still able to gather some money through government borrowing, unfortunately it directed these investments and numerous loans towards military armament and defenses. At that time, North Korea allocated 25% of the state's overall budget to military armament and to the army, and as we said, a large part of this money was originally through borrowing, and this of course led to a very great pressure on its economic level and the living standards of individuals. There is the problem that economic mismanagement and increasing spending on military aspects made North Korea in 1980 default for the first time on its debts. This led to closing the door on it being able to carry out a new lending process in order to be able to rise and rise again and spend on the military operation and the rest of the life grants within the state. These financial problems also worsened over time due to a very severe drought that struck North Korean lands at that time. This led to its neighbor, South Korea, being able to easily outdo it. North Korea struggled throughout the 1980s and was very dependent on the Soviet Union and China to provide food for its people and also to maintain the infrastructure of this country. These countries were happy to help North Korea in exchange for obtaining resources and raw materials from this country, because North Korea is full of raw materials that were necessary at that time for industry in China and in the Soviet Union as well, so that these countries can prove to the world that the path of communism is the path of the future. The situation in North Korea worsened more and more until we reached 1991, when the Soviet Union collapsed. With the collapse of the Soviet Union, North Korea lost a major lifeline, which was a significant source of support for it, namely the assistance from the Soviet Union. But unfortunately, even in the agricultural sector, North Korea no longer has the fertilizers required for agriculture, which it used to import from the Soviet Union, and its international trade agreements also failed. Because of the huge foreign debts that it accumulated, in addition to the fact that it was not originally able to produce enough goods, In order to sell or trade them, of course, due to this economic crisis, North Korea began to take some small steps towards capitalism, which it had never embraced. It started allowing small companies to make more independent investments within the country outside the central framework or central spending. This helped North Korea a bit in providing. This means a capital of 30 to 50% of the total national income of this country. But as we said, this was somewhat close to the capitalist direction that North Korea did not want. Today, North Korea does not show any direction. The economy is collapsing significantly. And the debts, it is also drowning in debts. The continuous military threats have led to more sanctions being imposed by major countries on North Korea. And all of this makes the economy suffer, which is already suffering significantly. To make a comparison, let me tell you that South Korea, which started from the same place as North Korea after the end of the war between the two Koreas and their division, now has an economy that is 40 times larger than that of North Korea. Can you imagine the number? South Korea's economy is more than 40 times that of North Korea, despite the fact that South Korea did not have natural resources like North Korea. Also, South Korea did not receive aid or support for state-level spending like North Korea did from its allies Russia and China. But this is the state of the economy in North Korea now. Of course, South Korea achieved this success from the beginning because it facilitated the process of owning private projects. It also spent and invested heavily in its infrastructure for large projects. By the way, South Korea achieved this prosperity while being continuously threatened by nuclear weapons from its neighbor, North Korea. The question now posed is, what awaits North Korea in the future? This question is very difficult to predict at this time, as the world can only wait and watch until this oppressive North Korean regime comes to an end and a new government or regime comes that can deal with and adapt to the new international policies. In the end, I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to support us by subscribing to this channel and liking the video. Stay tuned for the next video. Have a good evening.